The knife is a Great Eastern Cutlery, number 78, American Jack. The 78 was a model that I saw coming and I didn't think I was going to like very much. I didn't like, there was something about the blade shape that seemed off to me at first. After the knife came out, guys in the traditional knife community, the slip joint community, were picking them up and talking about how great GEC had done with the run. So I kind of had to backtrack on my line of thinking on it, and I decided that I was interested in one. I thought that I had missed the stag models, and about a week later, DLT Trading put up a number of models in stag with single blade. So I looked over the different models in stag, because they list the stag models individually, so that whichever one you choose to buy, that what you're looking at in the pictures is the actual knife that you're buying, so you can choose the stag that you want. So I went through them carefully for about a week, really trying to be particular about which one I wanted. Ended up picking this one up. I've got it, I've carried it, I patinaed the blade, sharpened it, and I've like I said, I've carried this knife quite a bit. I liked it enough, the 78, the American Jack, that I've picked up a number of models in the 78. All three of these are American Jacks. This one is Stag, Golden Jig Bone, and Gavin Ebony. And I've got more 78s than what's sitting here. I wanted to discuss changes in geometry, changes in blade geometry in sharpening, and what that does in sharpening, and how I go about dealing with that. And I thought that the 78 was a nice example of it. To have a consistent bevel on a knife, a consistent edge bevel, it depends on the angle of the edge bevel sitting against the angle of your primary grind. And if the angle of your primary grind is consistent, the angle of your edge bevel should be consistent. And if that's the case, it'll look nice. The edge bevel will stay the same size throughout the entire run of the blade. If there's a change in the geometry, in the blade geometry, and you don't change the angle of the edge bevel, it'll look inconsistent. You see this sometimes when there's a knife with compound bevels on it, and somebody sharpens it and they don't know to compensate for a change in the blade geometry. If the knife is thinner on the primary grind down at the bottom, say, and then the compound grind comes in at the top with a thicker primary grind at the top, the edge bevel will be wider, larger up near the top of the blade, and it'll look inconsistent. When guys are using a system like KME or Wicked Edge, and they don't have a whole lot of time in on it, they're just kind of following the instructions on it, and they go to do a knife like that with a compound bevel, that's when you can see that come up. Guys with more experience on those systems, they know how to deal with that. Well, GEC comes along with the spear point blades, and they kind of take it a step farther, because the primary grind behind the edge gets thicker as you get towards the tip. When you sharpen, as you round towards the tip of the knife, there's a degree, be it stone or strop, that you have to lift your hand up for it to meet the edge as you round near the top. It's deceiving sometimes for a sharpener, for freehand sharpeners, because you get used to how far your hand is from the stone or the strop, and as you get to the tip, it's the angle in here. It's not about your hand's distance from the stone. So, but with this, I mean, you kind of get used to it when the geometry stays normal. With this, there's an extreme change in the geometry. So when you're sharpening, you really have to lift up far. I mean, it's quite a distance that you have to lift in order to keep a consistent bevel along the knife. Again, I've done enough of these that I know when I'm sharpening a Great Eastern cutlery to go slow, because those kind of things can come up. I mean, I know that they can come up. It's not so much a concern with something like a Spyderco, but something like a Great Eastern cutlery, they don't have the same approach to knife making. It's kind of a different thing. Spyderco's, a knife like a Spyderco is, they're kind of made to be sharpened, made for use and made to be sharpened. Outside of that brand, you can run into different things, and the folks at GEC do things their own way, and that's fine. It's just, if you're going to go to sharpen something like a 78, you need to be aware of it, and you need to be a little bit prepared for it. I had picked up this 78 in Stag not too long ago. I was in a retail establishment, and this was there. There was a couple other knives I was looking at, but this one stood out to me. I was interested in another 78 in Stag, so I went ahead and picked it up. This blade is not patinaed at all. This is still fairly new, but I needed to sharpen the blade. With GECs, they use 1095. There's a few models with 440C, but I'm really not interested in a stainless steel or even a modern steel on a traditional folder. Some guys are, and that's fine. That's not my thing. If I'm looking at a traditional folder, I want a traditional steel, and I want something that will patina. So if they're, the models in GECs that are in 440C, which you don't see all that much, but that's really not what I'm interested in buying. So with the 1095, what I'm going for is a mirror polish. With 1095, you're really not talking about any heavy carbide content, certainly no vanadium that's going to fight any kind of stones or putting a mirror polish on the edge. Not to mention the fact that if the blade patinas, or if you patina the blade, having a mirror polish against that patina is nice. It really makes it stand out. So my approach to GECs is waterstones. In this case, I started with a 500 grit Shapton. I worked with that, and I cut a new bevel into the knife. At the tip, again, you really have to raise up far from the stone to keep a consistent looking bevel on the knife. Now, your angle's changing. You're not keeping a consistent angle, but when all is said and done, the bevel will appear consistent. So, I mean, you could make the argument, oh, but it's not the same angle. Okay, fine, but it's also 1095. If you're looking for high performance out of it, you should be going somewhere else. So, use the 500 grit Shapton, reprofiled the knife, cut the bevel in that I wanted, established an apex. Then I moved on to a 2000 grit Shapton. I worked with that, burr formation, one side then the other, along the entire length of the blade. Then I moved on to a 6000 grit Nubatama. Nubatama is an aluminum-based stone, like the Shaptons. I think it cuts well. I like it. I worked with that, and then I moved on to a 10,000 grit Suhiro. I worked with the 10K Suhiro, and then moved on to a 20K Suhiro. 10K Suhiro is a 1 micron stone. The 20K Suhiro is a 0.5 micron stone. So what I mean by that is, the reason I'm mentioning that is the 10K Suhiro is equivalent to a 16K Shapton. The 20K Suhiro is equivalent to a 30K Shapton. What we're talking about is the size of the abrasive in the stone. Both a 20K Suhiro and a 30K Shapton are half micron stones. And a 10K Suhiro and a 16K Shapton are both 1 micron stones, or around 1 micron. I like Suhiros more than Shaptons. They're harder, and I like the performance of the stones better. Not that there's anything wrong with Shaptons. Shaptons are great stones, just I really like Suhiros. So after the 20K Suhiro, I moved on to 1 micron diamond strop on leather. I was using poly diamond from Ken Schwartz. Um, the edge came up hair whittling sharp. Um, didn't have any complaints about it. It was plenty sharp enough. With GECs, I typically maintain the edge with a strop primarily after sharpening. From time to time, you'll have to go to stones and resharpen, but I'm not looking for super high performance out of the steel, um, or out of the edge. But the consistency that comes up from this approach and from keeping in mind the changes in geometry is great. It looks great. Uh, it's very pleasing visually. So it's really what I was going for, and to give the knife a good starting point, give the edge a good starting point as far as the sharpness goes. And then, like I said, I'll mainly maintain the knife with probably a 1 micron diamond strop and sharpen it as needed on stones. But the 78 is a great knife. I really, really like it. The pull weight and the walk and talk on the model is outstanding, and I really think that GEC did a good job with it. It's a run that I really am finding myself stuck on and really buying a lot of them. I think that they really knocked it out of the park with this run, and while the sharpening can be a little bit tricky, it's something that I've grown to enjoy dealing with. So good results with it, and great knife.